The clinic smelled like lemon oil and old wood, not the sterile money smell of wings, with my name on a plaque. And I was holding my little girl Ava, hot with fever, counting her breaths, while a ceiling fan ticked like a nervous heart. And then the door opened, and 12 years of my life walked in, wearing a white coat and a stethoscope, and I swear my chest forgot how to work. Lila Hart. The woman I once asked to marry me in a garden we planted together that looked straight at me, the clipboard slipped. Her hands caught it. Her voice went soft for my kid, not me. And in that tiny, honey-colored room full of crayon suns, she said, "Hey, kiddo, let's see what's hurting." And I stood there like a billionaire who could buy acreage by the county, but couldn't afford a single word. If you want the hook, here it is. I carried my feverish daughter into a small-town clinic, and the pediatrician who walked in was the love who vanished 2 weeks before our wedding, and by sunrise I had to decide if I'd stay walled up and safe or rip open the past and find out who broke what and why. I'm Mason Hale. I grow things for a living, the stubborn kind of growing, where you treat soil like a patient, coax breath back into tired ground. And yeah, the Hale farms you hear about on those regenerative podcasts, that's us. But none of that mattered when Lila pressed a cold stethoscope to my daughter's chest and said, calm as rain. Strep will handle it, and Ava, sweet and nosy, squinted at her and said, "You're pretty like the lady in Dad's old pictures," and my heart kicked because those photos live in a drawer nobody opens. Lila handed me the prescription and moved for the door, and I said her name and heard how raw it sounded. "Why did you leave?" Not a question more, a scene breaking, and she kept her hand on the knob and said, "I'm glad you built a life, Mason," which is the nicest way anyone's ever told me to mind my business. Then she was gone, and I buckled my sleepy kid in the truck and called the one person who knows where all my old bones are buried. "Jax, find out what happened to Dr. Lila Hart 12 years ago." And he just said, "You sure you want that kind of truth?" And I said his name back, and he got to work. You know that story. You tell yourself to survive the one where she chose somebody else and you weren't enough. I'd been living under that roof for a decade. Then Jax slid an envelope across my kitchen table, and my house shifted on its foundation, photos from angles that looked guilty. If you wanted them to, a fundraiser where Serena Vale, my PR director back then, leaned in like a kiss, a dinner where her hand rested on my arm, mid-laugh typed notes claiming she was pregnant, and I was marrying Lila out of obligation, and the metadata said those little bombs were assembled the week Lila vanished from the map from an IP Serena controlled, and I sat there with my kid's strawberry bowl sitting in the sink and felt heat crawl up my spine. Serena had told me Lila called her, said she was happy somewhere else, asked me to move on. Yeah, that happened. And I believed it because that lie fit too neatly into the hole in my chest. The next morning, Ava woke, pressing her earbees buzzing in there. She said so. Back to the clinic we went, no paperwork, straight to room 5 like a door was already open. And when Lila saw us, she did the thing great doctors do. She let her eyes show relief and worry at the same time. And she gathered my kid like she'd been waiting 12 years to anchor that little body, and after the exam, I settled Ava on the lobby couch with my jacket under her head and went back in and shut the door and put the envelope down between us. "Serena did this," I said, "not me." And Lila looked at the paper like it might bite. Then she read, and I watched a decade cross her face. Anger, grief, a little laugh when she hit the part where some low-grade villain used a dinner photo to burn down an engagement. And when she finished, she said, "I thought you picked her," and my hands finally stopped shaking. "I bought the Maple Street garden. I told her City was going to sell it. I kept the beds you planted and the oaks and the dumb heart carved in the bench. We pretended we didn't carve, and that pulled a real sound out of her half-laugh, half-sob, and I slid the deed over. It's yours. I'll be there at dawn tomorrow. Not to talk, just to sit where we used to be us if you want to come." She pressed the deed to her chest, like warmth said she couldn't promise anything. I said, "Don't just show up," and that became our language. Not promises, not speeches, just show up. Dawn tasted like mint dew on the chain-link birds trying out their voices. And there she was, without makeup or armor, walking the beds we built when we were poor and reckless, pinching rosemary, inhaling memory. And I sat with Ava sleeping on my shoulder, and we didn't fix 12 years. In 30 minutes, we breathed. Then we did it the next day and the next, and Nora, my housekeeper, with the battle-hardened tenderness, flipped pancakes and said, "About time the right ghost knocked a door you can actually open." Dry Creek's Harvest Festival is loud, the way family is loud. Fiddles, pie, firefighters holding babies. I was half listening to Jax brag about his brisket when Serena's perfume announced her before she spoke. "Donors are worried about optics," she said, smiling toward Lila across the square. "Would be a shame if folks thought your doctor came back for your story, not the children." And I said, quiet enough to cut, "You forged letters to blow up my life," and she said, "Careful, that's defamatory." And Jax handed her a print of emails she thought she deleted, subject line, Maple Street, body line. "Make sure she sees him with me, make sure she believes it." And Serena didn't crack prose, don't in public, but she leaned in and hissed, "After everything I did for you." And I said, "You did it for you, and my brand can dent, my kid can't. And that woman tells me the truth without a fee." I grabbed the mic for 2 minutes and told the town a version without names, about lies that look like help, about how easy it is to call someone the problem for believing in something good. And half the square raised their hands when I asked if they'd ever been told to be smaller. And then the music came back, because life doesn't stop for speeches, and 2 songs later, a scream tore the night, the kind that makes every parent move before they think, and the kids pointed at the tree line and said, "She saw a deer," and my body emptied out, and Lila snapped to boss mode. "Split and sweep, call every 30 seconds, and I crashed right, and she crashed left, and I was listing every creek and drop-off in my head when I heard it small and brave, Daddy and Lila answered. Keep calling, and I found them in a shallow wash, Ava muddy and shaking in Lila's arms. Ankle twisted, not bad. And when we stepped into the light again, the town gathered us up like a quilt. And later on, a blanket with Ava asleep between us, I looked at Lila and said, "You ran toward her," and she said, "Always," and that word changed the temperature in my chest. 2 quiet weeks later, I asked her to marry me in my kitchen. No fireworks, just my grandmother's green ring, and the truth. I don't want to date or see where this goes. I know where it goes if we let it forever. Will you say yes so we can spend our time building instead of wondering? And Ava Conspirator pulled a silicone band from her pocket and said, "This one's for me, so we all match." And Lila went still in a way I knew. And she took out a letter from a Seattle hospital offering a research job she'd applied for, back when running felt noble, and she said, "I don't trust myself not to run." And Ava's face broke. "But you said you loved me." And Lila cried. "I do. That's why I'm terrified." And I put the ring away and said the hardest kind thing. "I know if you're leaving, leave completely. Don't rip her open twice," and the door closed soft, and the house felt foreign. We lasted 3 days on the 4th. Nora called Lila because pride can wait, and kids can't fever 103 asking for you. And Lila came with a medical bag and a face that hadn't slept. She worked like a pro, calm, steady, told Ava stories about brave girls and gardens, and when the fever broke and the room cooled down, Ava whispered, "Will you leave after I'm better, because kids go straight to the cut?" And Lila looked at me and said, I don't want to. I want to stay. I am so scared, and downstairs in my office, the one with the wooden box of old letters, she told me the route. Her mother said she was her whole heart. Then packed a suitcase before sunrise, so she became the lever to beat being left, which isn't cleaner, just lonely with better branding. And I said, you fix it by staying scared and staying anyway. One pancake at a time. One midnight question at a time. And she said, I already signed, and I said, then unsign, because sometimes the bravest thing is a phone call you make before you can talk yourself out of it. She called from the garden gate the next morning. Shoes wet, I declined. She said, breath shaking, ask me again. And I did, and she touched her forehead to mine and said, ask me after the first hard season after flu clinics, and a dumb argument, and 2 apologies, and 2 bedtime stories, because she forgot something both times, and it shouldn't have felt like a win, but it did, because the win wasn't a ring that day. It was a woman putting boxes of books on my porch and staying for dinner, and burning grilled cheese and laughing on the back step, because happiness scared her, and she did it anyway, and Serena resigned once the board saw what they needed, and I didn't drag her to court, which you can argue with in the comments, because some fields you salt, and some you plow under, and plant something better. And 4 months later, the morning glories we planted opened like little mouths catching light, and Lila slid a plain band onto her own finger and said, this is for me, a reminder. I choose to stay today and then again tomorrow, and I took her hand and said, then I'll ask in winter, and she smiled like a door staying open. That's the story, not tidy true. A circle that runs through a clinic that smelled like lemon oil and a garden where second chances climb fences. A man who was misjudged and trained himself to be steel learning that softness is harder. A woman who ran learning that staying is a muscle. A child who believed both of us back to life, and now. I'll ask you what I ask myself at night. If someone lied to blow up your life, would you torch them in court? Or let the town take their title and move on? If someone ran to survive and came back with both hands shaking, would you hand them a ring or a chair and a cup of coffee? And if you grew up, told your feelings were too much, do you believe people like me get to be soft, too? You know what I mean? Tell me where you're watching from. Drop your take on justice and second chances. And if you've got a story like this, say it out loud. I'll be in the comments.